Hey everybody, today we're going to cover chapter 9. It might be a two-part video, might be a one-part video, depends on how fast I will go. But in this video, what I'm going to show you is a couple of more string methods that you can use. I'm going to explain what the string builder class is, and just a little introduction to wrapper classes and what that is. Alright, so let's talk wrapper classes. So wrapper classes are basically classes that are created for the primitive data types. So Java will provide you with 8 different primitive data types that we covered in the very first early chapters. So they're called primitive because they're not created from any classes, so they're not object. You know how a string is an object, right? But an integer is not an object. An integer is called a primitive data type. So, wrapper classes are those classes that are made for those primitive data types. And wrapper comes from the word wrapped around, so the whole class is wrapped around a primitive data type. One thing that you should know about the wrapper classes is that they are a part of java.lang package, and java.lang package is automatically imported into your program. You do not have to write an import statement for it, so this is just automatically already exist within any of your programs that you write in Java. A couple of more things to know about the wrapper classes. Well, first of all, they allow you to create objects that represent the primitive data type, and I will show you example of it later. Now, those classes are immutable, so once you create an object, we already covered the mutable classes, and what they mean, once you create an object, you cannot change that object's value. It's set there for life, basically. Now, to get any value that your object is storing, you have to call a method that is called a getter. And remember, setters and getters, so the getter one. And then some wrapper classes, they also provide some static methods that are very useful that I will show you guys in a second. Alright, so let's start with our first primitive data type, which is a character. And you might be familiar with it if you just, maybe you've seen it as CHAR. Well, that stands for character. And today we're going to get familiar with the character class that's going to allow your char data type, which is a primitive data type, to be wrapped into an object. And I'm going to show you guys some couple of static methods that this class will provide for you. Alright, let's begin with the first simple methods. So there is a couple of Boolean methods that are provided to you inside of the character class, and they're all very useful. And let's recall that the Boolean class can only return either true or false. So let's get familiar with these methods. The first method right here is called isDigit, and your isDigit method will return true only if whatever you're passing into this method, the parameter that you're passing it to, if it is a digit from 0 to 9. So if it is a digit from 0 to 9, it will return true, otherwise it will return false. The next one is isLetter, works in a similar fashion, but instead of a digit, it's checking if whatever you're passing is an alphabetic letter, so it will return true in that case, otherwise it will return false. Now, isLetter or digit combines the two, isDigit and isLetter, so either if it's an alphabetic letter or a digit from 0 to 9, it will return true, otherwise it will return false. And isLowercase is another one that will return true only if whatever you're passing into your parameter ch is a lowercase letter. Now, obviously, we also have the isUppercase. Works in a similar fashion to the lowercase one, but it checks if the character that you're passing is an uppercase letter. Now, isSpaceChar stands for isSpace character, so it checks if the character that you're sending is a space, and isWhitespace, it's looking if it's a white space character, so it can either be a space, tab, or a new line character. So as you can see, all of these are pretty self-explanatory. Depends on the name that you're using, but they are all self-explanatory. So just look at the name and you should be familiar with what they are doing. You do not have to memorize them completely, but it's a good way to know that these methods are available to you in case you need to use them in your program. And even if you don't know all of them, you can go and search the character class. If you remember some idea that there is a method that exists, and for example, you need to check if your character is uppercase and you do not remember what the method is called. So what you're going to do, you can just Google character class static methods, and you will see all of the static methods that your character class provides to you. And obviously you will find your is uppercase and you will see how to use it. Now, the next two methods that I'm going to show you, they actually return something to you. So these methods, two lowercase and two uppercase, they will return either a lowercase equivalent of whatever character you pass into this method, or if you're using two uppercase, it's going to return the uppercase equivalent of whatever you're passing, which is pretty neat. Now, the next two methods that I'm going to show you, they're pretty useful whenever you need to detect any empty or blank strings, and there is a difference between empty and a blank string. So empty string has a length of 0, so it means that it contains no characters at all, not even a white space. Now, a blank string is a string that is either empty, so it consists a length of 0 characters, or it contains only white space characters, such as a space, tab, or a new line. So a blank string can be empty, however, an empty string cannot be blank. Now, a string class will provide these two methods, so not a character class. We are moving forward from that. So a string class will provide some methods that's gonna help you detect those empty and blank strings. And again, they're pretty self-explanatory. To see if your string is blank, you will use a method called isBlank, and to see if your string is empty, you will use the method called isEmpty. Alright, moving on to substrings. We know that the substring is just a string that is part of another string. So it's a smaller string inside of a bigger string. And there are some methods that provide you with the opportunity to search for that substring inside of the other string. So there is a method called startsWith, which stands for just, again, I love this about Java, that they're all self-explanatory. So startsWith will just search for the string that starts with whatever you provide as an argument here. Ends with the same idea. It's going to search for a string that provides you with whatever, with a string that that ends with whatever you provide as an argument into str. Then region matches. That's an interesting one. The region matches method, it's gonna test if two regions of your string are matching or equal. There are two different ways for it, and one that's gonna ignore the case sensitivity, and this one will not ignore case sensitivity. So these two methods, they just check if one region of your string matches the other region of this same string. Now, contains is the one that you're going to see most often. Contains is a method that's going to return true if your string contains whatever you put inside of the method contains, whatever you send it. So for example, in this example right here, we have a string called str that has chocolate ice cream, and then we are checking if our string contains the word ice, then we're going to print we have ice. And in this case, this is going to return true because here's our word ice, and it's going to return true. This is an example of the startsWith method. It works the same way. It gives you back the Boolean value, and it checks if your string starts with whatever you put as an argument. In this case, it's 4, and we're checking if our string Fourscore and 7 years ago starts with 4. In this case, it will return true because 4 does begin this string. Fourscore, the first word score. That's why this code will print the string starts with 4. ends with works the same way. The only difference is that we're checking if the string ends with a particular set of characters or a particular word, particular sentence, and so on. However, one thing that you need to know is that the starts with and ends with are both case sensitive. Here is the deeper look into the region matches methods, and this one is, again, as I told you, they both are performing the same thing. The only difference is for this one you can ignore case, so ignore case sensitivity, or you can perform a case sensitive comparison. Now a couple more methods to search for a certain character inside of a string. There is the index of method. An index of will just return to you the position of the first occurrence of the specified character in a string. And so the first time when you run this method, the first time when your character is found, that's the subscript that is going to be returned to you. And last index of works the same way. The only difference is it's going to show you the last location instead of the first location of a substring or a character whenever you're looking for it inside of your object. And let me show you an example real quick. In this example, we have a string 7 years ago, and then we're declaring the integer first and integer last. Now they're not initialized yet, but they are declared. Now, first is going to store the index of the first occasion of the character R, and last is going to store the last occasion of the character R. Now, let's look and see what these two methods are going to return to us. In this case, F is going to be at 0, O is going to be at 1, U is going to be at 2, R is going to be at 3. So this one will return 3, and then last is going to return whatever the number of the subscript this R has, because this is the last R. And that is going to be 24, because remember that we also count the white spaces. The white spaces count as its separate index. So after you just count all of the white spaces and letters, R is going to be in the position of 24. Now here is a little table for a little better description. If you want to read this, you can pause this and read. Here's for the index, and here's the table for the last index of method. So you can pause to read this. Now another method that is available to you is called substring, and what it does is just going to extract a substring from your string object. Now, two things to know about this method. So a start location is required, however the end location is optional. So in this case, with this little piece of code that we have in front of us, we have the full name string that is Cynthia Susan Smith. Now for the last name, we want to take a substring of our full name, and we want it to begin at the location number 14, at the index 14, and then we want to print the full name is with the full name and the last name is with the last name. Now what is stored inside of those variables? Now full name is going to store the full name as it is, and the last name is going to store just Smith. And you might think, why just Smith? Well, because Smith is what starts at the location 14, right? Because remember, we started at the location 14. We didn't want the whole string, so we started at the location 14, and then we didn't specify the last digit, the last index. That is why we went up to the end of our string. Now let's get familiar with two more methods that will help us with manipulating strings, and one of them is called concat, which stands for concatenation of two string objects. And what that means, if we have one string and we want to add another string to it, that is concatenation. So for example, if you have a string that is dog and then a second string cat, if you concatenate the two, you will have one string that will contain dog cat without any spaces. It's just going to be one word, DOGCAT. So that's what concatenation is, just the addition of two strings together. Now, replace is an interesting one because the replace one is gonna help you replace any occurrences of one character by another character. And I will show you an example of this in a little bit. Now there is another useful method for you guys to know. It's called indent, and it takes an integer, whatever is inside of the parentheses, whatever integer there is, that's how many spaces are going to be added to the beginning of each line of your string. So what indent does, just adds a couple of characters to your in front of your string, a couple of white space characters. However, you can also send a negative value into the indent, and if you send a negative value, that's how many white space characters will be actually deleted from the beginning of each line of your string. So pretty obvious. Plus, you're gonna add some characters if your number is positive, and if your number is negative, which stands for minus, then those white spaces will be deleted from the beginning of your line. If n is going to be equal to 0, then nothing is going to happen, and this method will return just the same string that you used this method on. Another useful thing to know is that yes, you can call all of these methods just on regular string literals. And what is a literal? And everything that's inside of the double quotation mark is called a string literal. So for example, in our first line, string str1, what we do is we're using the method repeat, and what repeat does is how many times you put inside of the parentheses, whatever number you put inside of the parentheses, that's going to mean how many times you want whatever is inside of your double quotation marks to repeat. In this case, we have a star, and star is going to be repeated 3 times. Now, the second one, str2, has a x concatenated with y and z, and that's going to result in a string 2 being equal to x, y, z, because remember, concatenation is just the addition of two strings. Now, str3, what we're doing, we are doing a bunch of methods one after the other, and I showed you an example of this earlier, and I showed you that this is possible and is a good way to use all of your methods if you're working with a lot of methods on one string. And in this case, what are we doing first? So we have a string literal a, and we're trying to concatenate it with b, c, and a dash. So what that's going to do is going to result in a string abc that ends with a dash. However, after that, we want to repeat that string 3 times. So what that's going to do is going to take abc dash and repeat it 3 times. abc dash, abc dash, abc dash. Now, then, the last thing that we're doing, and we're taking all of those letters and returning them with an uppercase. So all of these ABCs are going to come from lowercase into the uppercase letters. Another thing that the string class will provide to you is the static overloaded value of methods. And what that's going to do, it's going to take any primitive data value or any character array, and it's going to return to you as a string object. So simply put, if you send a Boolean value true, for example, in our first example right here, string value of, if you send a Boolean value true, it's going to return true, but as a string, so as a word true. The same thing works with a 50, which is technically we're sending a double, which is a number, but it's going to return as a string 5.0. And the same thing works with the character C, it's going to return as a string object C. Now, this is an example of how the value of works, and see we have Boolean called b that equals true, then we have a character array of letters a, b, c, d, e, then we have a double of 2.4981567 and an integer I that equals to 7. And then if we use all of these value of on all of these variables and arrays, everything that's going to be returned to us is going to be as a string. So all of the output that you see under the produces the following output is actually strings and not whatever we assigned these variables to initially. So not Boolean, not character array, not double, all of these are strings now. Alright, this is going to be the end of part 1 for our chapter 9. I hope you guys got familiar with all of these available methods that you can use in your programs, and as per usual, let me know if there are any questions. I will be glad to help you understand the material more. And I'll see you in the next video.